Natural law, cosmic law, universal law, or God's law, whichever name you call them, are the principles governing the how and why the universe functions. Once you learn how these laws interact, you can harness their powers and use them as tools to improve your daily life. For students of metaphysics and spiritual studies, the study of natural law is essential. By enacting the power of these universal forces, you stop being a victim and learn to become the master of your destiny. Rev Terry Ryan. We are most fortunate to introduce Terry Ryan, ordained spiritual minister, resident medium, and spiritual teacher from historic Camp Chesterfield in Indiana. Terry Ryan has had two parallel paths throughout most of his life, one working in nonprofit health and human service management, and the other his studies in spiritual, occult, and metaphysical areas. Each path has assisted his personal growth and spiritual unfoldment while providing a positive crossover effect on each other. He brings his 35 years of spiritual studies and insights to his informative and life-changing book, Keys to the Kingdom. Whether accepted as truth or not, the Atlantis civilization contains many teachings and examples of how consciousness and our action affect outcomes, future events, and evolution. There are many parallels with the unfolding of our current worldwide events. Join us Friday night with Terry Ryan to experience an increased understanding of how universal laws and principles of hermetics can be applied in our daily lives to aid and assist our planet and the personal spiritual growth and ascension process. Welcome everybody to Andromeda 7, your celestial gateway, your channel for community support, help, friendship, love, knowledge, and just plain being of value to others. Welcome back. If you're new to the channel, it's so good to have you with us. And if you are returning, we love that, and thank you for being here. Well, you know, it's Friday night. It's time to feed your mind and grow your heart. And tonight's topic is Metaphysics, Atlantis, the Powers of Universal Law, with Spiritualist Minister Terry Ryan. It's such a pleasure to have you with us tonight. Thank you all for being here. And just to give a quick shout out here to, and if I can get my screen to move. Okay. There we go. All right. Let's see who we've got in the house. And thank you for all the well wishes, especially you, Barry, Chad, and Chloe. Thank you for the well wishes last week. Wasn't feeling quite up to par, but hey, I'm back and I'm looking good tonight. Okay. Grandpa
Yes, you
Brian.
are.
Grandpa Brian, I see you out there. It's good to see you. Glad you're here. Thank you. Barry, Chad, Elderberry, thank you again. Jeannie, Musgrave, Griffin, thank you for your well wish as well. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Chloe, love you. And Truth Seeker, hi, Jayashir. It's good to see you tonight as well. Let's see, who else do we have looking like? I think that would be about, JB Heddle, good to see you as well. Thanks for being here. All right, good crew. Woohoo! All right, I like it. I like it a lot. Thanks for being here. And of course, Lucky Stone, good to see you. Always a pleasure. Love your little videos. Starlight 7 and Fire Girl 13, good to see you as well. Yes, you are a beautiful soul. Yes, you are. All right. Well, I'm going to throw it over to Teresa now, my beautiful co-host, Teresa D. Antone, and she's going to introduce Terry, as well as Sophia.
Okay. Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome back to the channel tonight. And my apologies to Grandpa Brian. I could have sworn I sent you the email with the link, so I just resent it. If you want to jump on, jump on. If you just want to chill and chat, chill and chat. But it wasn't on purpose, my brother. Love you dearly. And we have good news. Brian's mom, all those good intents we sent out for her healing, she made it through her surgery, got checked afterwards, and she is 100% cancer-free.
That's awesome.
Excellent.
Awesome.
So it's a combination of modern medicine and our good intents and Brian's love for his mom, and Source didn't let any of them down.
Yep, it works.
That's
It works.
fantastic news. Fantastic news. Yep. Okay, well, actually, Lori's video did a great job of introducing Rev Terry, so I'm going to kick it over to Sophia because she knows him personally and takes classes from him. So, Sophia, you wanted to bring Terry through the gateway. We're so glad you decided to join us, Terry. And he has this incredible book where he has taken all the universal laws and with the Hermetic principles to put it into one text, one context, with stories demonstrating how each one of these laws work in your life. It's a fantastic read. I really hope you guys get a chance to get a copy of it because it's not this huge volume and it's easy to read and really, really good book. So, Sophia, why'd you want to bring Terry through that gateway?
Well, I myself found great liberty and freedom and prosperity employing natural law and changing my thoughts and employing positive cognitive skills. And we were talking about natural law, thoughts are things, energy follows thought. And it's just like, I've studied it long enough, but have not written a book about it. So since people are like, well, what about natural law? And asking me questions, I'm like, pump the brakes, stick to what I know. That's the Norse pantheon and the runes. I said, if we really want to have an in-depth talk about natural law, I know the exact person that I have learned. We're not even going to go there. I've learned so much from Terry, just taking classes and conversations in the cafeteria at the Max. And it's just, I decided to share. It's not my strong suit, but yeah.
Oh, you do it well, Sophia.
Thanks.
Yeah, you do. And we're so glad you did it. And again, Terry, thank you for coming. And we talked a little bit before the show, so he knows what the flow is going to be like here. We're just going to try to put this in a little bit of framework and context for you so that you know where we're coming from. You got a hint of that in the video. We're going to go into it just a little bit deeper with Atlantis and universal law and how those are related. So this just gets things started here. Universal law, the idea first proposed, believe it or not, we started hearing about it in our post-Atlantean society through Agostino Stucco. He made it. He brought it back into our consciousness in 1497 through 1548. That one and the same divine truth may be found in the religious and philosophical traditions of different periods and places, all considered as different manifestations of the same universal perennial philosophy. It represents the divine universal consciousness of source energy and the all that I am. So it's an underlying thread in every major religion and every spiritualist community. It never goes away. We leave it. In Gnosticism, for example, the spiritual universe is considered what they call the abode of God or source, and of the totality of the divine powers and emanations from that living, breathing energy. This abode is called the pleroma, according to the Gnostic doctrines, and it's basically going from a state of fullness to one of deficiency. That is to say, for man, a state of self-knowledge to one that is completely ignorant from consciousness of a divine source energy and nature, to that state and to complete unconsciousness. That's how the Gnostics see it, as a path that evolves as humanity gets deeper and deeper into the matter and further away from the spiritual connection with the
in physics we would call that entropy.
Yes, entropy. That's right. Thank you, Dalbert. Yep. Number two, in spirituality in general, they view it as the totality of fullness of the Christ spirit, or also known as Great Spirit to Native Americans, or Light of the Sun in other cultures. And there's many names for this same energy of source energy. And one of the most ancient and widely accepted manifestations of these laws is believed to have been given to humanity through Hermes Trismegistus, the legendary Hellenistic figure that originated as a syncretic combination of the Greek god Hermes and the Egyptian god Thoth. Okay? But the wisdom attributed to this particular figure in antiquity combined a knowledge of both the material and the spiritual world, which rendered the writings attributed to him of great relevance to those who were interested in the interrelationship between the material and the divine, or of particular importance were his principles. The most important ones were his hermetics. That's the one that stood out the most and what a lot of us are looking at today. So there is a thought and an understanding in our current consciousness right now that civilizations are not just physical cultural centers. We're going to be talking about one of these civilizations tonight. In esoterica, we view them as an embodiment of certain kinds of consciousness, stages of development that they go through just like a person does, a whole civilization does, that humanity goes through in synergy with universal laws. That's the way it was for the longest time. We can understand then, if you look at it from that perspective, that these past times that we've gone through, other dimensions people want to call them, epochs of civilizations, they are echoes of our own development, building one upon the other through time as we understand it and explain it. And one of the first, it is believed, civilizations was Atlantis, because that's where humans took on form after Lemuria and other epochs, as we were falling from spiritual heavens, if you will, into physical matter and developing our human forms. That energy and that consciousness was carried over to civilizations after Atlantis. Okay, and we're going to talk about that just a little bit when I tell you the Atlantis story. So whether, as Lori said in the video, whether accepted as truth or not, the story of Atlantis in this dimension of reality contains many teachings and examples of how consciousness, our thoughts, our egos, and our actions affect outcomes, future events, and evolution, not only as individuals, but as a whole planet as well. Okay? So I got to forewarn you, it's a deeper discussion than what we're used to doing here, and it will require a temporary suspension of various beliefs, personal preferences, prejudices, and judgments. It will also require some open minds and hearts to fully absorb the spirit and intent of the information we are presenting to you tonight for the purposes of information, knowledge, and sharing. We're not trying to influence anybody. We're not trying to change anybody's mind. We're not trying to tell anybody that their thoughts or perceptions on things should be this way or that way. We're bringing you a perspective, because right now in society, there's so much going on and there's a lot of confusion, especially to people who are new to spirituality and really just starting to wake up, and they're being bombarded with a lot of different kinds of information. So maybe this will provide a framework for them to work from, and from there they can make their choices. Anyway, for many of you in our chat room, you've been in this for years, and so some of it's going to sound a little bit mundane because you've been through it before. But you may not have heard it from quite this perspective. We'll see. Remember, this is a safe place, a safe space for all to enjoy, and we hope you have a really good time and take away some things to think about. All right? So, that's it for the opening remarks, and I can go straight to the Atlantean story, but I thought maybe you all would want to highlight some things before I jump into the story of Atlantis itself. What do you think, Lori? You all want to say anything about that?
That's up to you. How about you, Sophia? How do you feel about that?
I am just taking it all in. This is a very, very broad spectrum. And I don't want to get ahead of myself because I know I'm good at that. I know.
Then
So,
I think we'll go right into the
Okay.
your piece
Yeah.
there. Yes.
All right. Well, I'll need about a good 10 minutes for that, or maybe less. I'll try to condense it as best I can. But if you try to condense something like this too much, you lose the essence.
It's a lot of information. It really
Yeah,
is. So
yeah,
sit
yeah.
back, relax, and just enjoy and
Okay.
listen.
All right. All right. Okay. So the Atlantis story as a prelude to our roundtable discussion. Okay. I'll do my best, folks. In metaphysics and esoterica, many spiritualists understand that a sequence of events and patterns with a specific vibrational frequency that our subconscious knows, because this is an ancient wisdom that's within our soul. So we naturally kind of have a knowing about something. And it's said that we know how to read the Akashic records or read time properly by the energy of the epoch. Not by linear time, but by the actual energy of the epoch and a specific mix of cosmic rays coming in from other planetary bodies that make up that epoch relative to where we are in any given time. And through that, you can then calculate density. You can tell just how dense, how far someone has sunk into the matter, how far a group of people have sunk in, how far our planet is entrenched into the matter, which is that separation from knowledge and wisdom and understanding of cosmic events and connection with source. So it's believed in esoterica that you can't really read the records properly until you understand the secrets and events of creation itself. Now, just one model, there's many, I'm just going to use one, as described in anthroposophy, for example. The philosophy that Rudolf Steiner put together after looking at the Gnosticism and Christian mysticism and Eastern traditions. He created the anthroposophy model. The secrets of evolution, he says, are recapitulated over and over again in slightly different forms. So we have to know what these recapitulations are and what these stages are and what they represent to humanity. Esotericists generally believe there was a period of time in our distant past, a time when we were becoming less spiritualized and more human as we fell into density. And this is most often expressed by groups of people as the fall or the descent into matter. Now, we're not talking about the fallen angels story. We're talking about our descent from spiritual, heavenly, cosmic energy into the matter of the Earth school itself, okay? And this took place sometime after Lemuria, when Earth had evolved into a more solid form. And it is believed that energy beings from higher aspects of Earth, this is important, volunteered to be incarnated into human consciousness and sometimes into human forms to aid and assist humanity in its early development, both form and consciousness. So what do we mean by higher aspects of planets? Each planetary body, it is believed, has the higher etheric expression and energy of other planets in our solar system. Remember, planets are alive. All matter is alive and has some form of consciousness. So they talk to one another. They interact on an etheric, energetic level, just as humans interact with animals and plants. We all interact in some energetic fashion. So the planets are higher expressions of certain energies at certain time periods, and a lot of them are expressions of Earth itself. So there are at least 7 of these planets in our solar system that are all connected. There are also higher expressions of human forms, and most oftenly perceived in post-Atlantean modern times as angels or ETs. And those who had passed their initiations, well, they're actually bodies and energies of beings from multiple dimensions of reality, multiple universes, multiple solar systems, primarily within our own solar system, who already passed initiations at a higher and had higher conscious development, And they knew what humans were going to be evolving into because they had already been through this themselves in other cycles. And so they volunteered to come down here with their consciousness to help humanity as humanity was first developing and first forming. So they are higher aspects of ourselves because they had a hand in helping us with our creation. They were infused with divine source intelligence and wisdom energy that they had accumulated during various evolutions and actually had a hand in co-creating us as well as other beings of nature. And since energetically they represent our higher aspects, humanity had a hand, you might say, in creating its own self. We created ourselves. That's where we are the creators. Co-creators, anyway. So, the civilization that we're talking about that first started all this was the Atlantean epoch, and it was understood by Plato and other philosophers of his day. More modern folks like Blavatsky, Casey, Steiner, and many others, including those of us today, who reference early writings and who experience past life memories, visions, and dreams. Okay? So we don't have a whole lot of evidence, archaeological evidence of Atlantis. We can make connections with it, but we don't have a lot of written material. But we have all of these people who have picked up elements of it and parts of it to come together with a collective understanding that it really was, it really was. So in anthroposophy and theosophy, there are 7 epochs. The 3 taking place during our descent to matter were Polarian, Hyperborean, and Lemurian. Most of you know this in the chat room, so don't freak out. Polarian, Hyperborean, and Lemurian. Those were all different phases of our descent. So we had consciousness, we started developing awareness, we started deciding that we wanted to experience this environment. During the 4th epoch, which is the Atlantean epoch, we continue to materialize and we continue to take on form, becoming more and more dense and less spiritualized, less connected to each other the way we used to be, less connected to source. All of nature in our human physical form, through trial and error, are refined during this time into our current divinely created present forms. So, since there is no codified version of mythology, the story of Atlantis can only be summarized, and generally it goes something like this. Around 11,500 years ago, the continent of Atlantis was populated by an advanced civilization. The Greek philosopher Plato, in his works Timaeus and Critias, claimed that Atlantis lay beyond the Pillars of Hercules, which some believe were the modern-day Straits of Gibraltar, and as a great island in the sea. The island was described as being greater in size than Libya and Asia put together. But early on in its development, Atlantis was said to have been a beautiful, peaceful place of high technology and deep connection with astral energies embodied in other worlds and cultures, primarily those in our own solar system that are just expressions of Earth, as I said a few minutes ago. These planets embodied source energy and beings of our consciously advanced future selves interacting with Atlanteans in synergy by thought and intent, and infused them with wisdom to help guide them on their way to developing into human form. They weren't controlling them, manipulating them. They were helping because they had been through it themselves. So over time, however, their advanced civilization experienced a division of consciousness into 2 very different streams, or polar opposite energetic impulses, resulting in a spiritual civil war, etherically, spiritually, between their divinely and their soul-infused, highly knowledgeable and wise priest kings. Now, these priest kings, don't think of them in terms of modern day kings and rulers. They were specifically infused with divine energy and wisdom to help create their world in very special ways and very special rituals. Okay, so how did they end up going from a very divine, unified, brotherly love, all infused with light and energy, into some segments of an impulse that didn't help humanity at all. It has to do with Mars, the planet Mars. You may not have heard this, but planet Mars is an expression of Earth itself as well. And it was populated with higher forms of Earth humans, just like other planets. And they had previously passed through multiple layers of initiations and graduating to master levels of consciousness themselves. Mars was beautiful, just like Atlantis. But as time went on, it started nearing its completion of what you call a dark cycle of its own evolution, resulting in lower energies and not so great spiritual practices, including the annihilation of females, the destruction of all divine energy. How dare they? But they did. So they became a warlike planet, dominated by masculine energy. Now, some of the Atlantean priest kings who had been tapping into the good, the helpful aspects and energies of Martians, not knowing that the Martians were going through this kind of downgrade in their environment, they trusted them. So when they came in with all these other impulses and all these other thoughts, some of the priest kings decided to go with that flow. They were taken in by it. And they were not aware of what was unfolding on Mars. Okay? So this group of priest kings who thought that they were dealing with higher aspects, became influenced by the lower frequencies and lower energies of these Martians, resulting in a resistance to the divine impulse, also called the Christ spirit, divine intelligence, Christ impulse, divine source energy, however you want to look at it, or sun source. They, in essence, shifted their thoughts from a state of fullness, of that understanding and that connection with spirit, to one of deficiency and ignorance of divine origin design and nature to unconscious energy. They began opening energy portals into the cosmos, into yet other worlds and interdimensional beings also of lower frequency. Relying heavily on material resources of nature, including insects and animals, they then engaged in magical occult practices, including alchemy and rituals that contaminated and corrupted human consciousness through an etheric DNA manipulation. This is not the physical sense like we have today, with instruments where we do gene splicing and all that, because they had the ability to manifest thought forms into physical forms. So they were tampering with our development of physicality in our design, our blueprint that we were creating. They brought in and started experimenting with animals and insects. They wanted power. They were animated through dark practices. They wanted to control and enslave humanity and the cosmos. Why? Because they had just destroyed their own planet. They didn't have anywhere else to go. So these thought forms then manifested into physical mutations and hybrid beings that could not hold the higher energy frequencies. So dense were their energies, they could not ascend. And as their taste for control consumed their thoughts and actions, they created all sorts of creatures, tulpas. They engaged in transhumanism, and they enslaved the servitors that they had also created. They themselves sunk so low in frequency that they became archons and demons, as did the hybrids they created, and they had infused those hybrids with their own dark energy and will. So some of these are now considered grays, the grays that we experience now. They're not extraterrestrial. They're humans that were corrupted early on by the Mars influence. And they want to trick humanity into believing that they are powerful extraterrestrials from other worlds who will help you and save you, while they're abducting our people and conducting physical experiments in our conscious environment. Now they're doing it against our will. So that's how that story goes. At the end of its epoch, whether you believe it or not, take it or not, but this is what a lot of people in esotericism understand as truth. And at the end of its epoch, Atlantis was wiped out by a great earthquake that then turned the sea into an impassable, muddy bank, considered to be the first deluge in Earth's catastrophic geology. From this collapsed civilization, it is believed that the higher vibrational wisdom teacher survivors, those priests who resisted these changes that the Martians were trying to inflict upon their civilization, some of them survived and traveled across the globe where they resettled and lived in groups of 12. From these remnants of Atlantis arose the pyramids that are found across the globe, and their similarities in architecture, symbology, language can be explained by the cultures all sharing a common origin, which many to believe is Atlantis. It all goes back to Atlantis. From the esoteric, metaphysical, and anthrophilosophical perspective, that darker energy impulse, that state of consciousness, lives on to this day in our current post-Atlantean epoch. And this is why this is so important. Does any of this sound familiar to you? The higher-minded, the higher conscious ones who passed their initiations and ascended into the cosmic energetic hierarchies, some choosing to re-enter the Earth stream of consciousness as masters and teachers today to help humanity and the Earth to continue their evolutionary process. So they ascended, spread out, taught everybody what they could. They've ascended, and some of them are still coming back here to help us out. It's also understood that some spirit beings who reincarnate choose to tap into the lower impulse, that other stream of consciousness, whatever it is, continue collaboration with lower frequency energy beings who want to bring about their agendas. But guess what their agendas are? DNA manipulation, artificial intelligence, transhumanism, nanotechnology, population control, and numerous other types of nefarious activities. So there's a reason that all this is going on. And it's been happening, and it's followed us from epoch to epoch to epoch, because they never go away, this other impulse. And although some may not be so heavily involved in the darkest parts of those agendas, they're still nonetheless actively engaging in the profaning of the mysteries, which is what we're going to talk about tonight. Whether they're doing it consciously or subconsciously, many of our spiritualists today are being involved in things that are strange and distorted beliefs and practices that form a shell around the collective consciousness, which makes it hard for the rest of us to break through. And these individuals are not initiated into the inner mysteries or esoteric knowledge. They haven't had any formal training in the mysteries, and yet they try to experiment and interact with the ideas and concepts. Oh, let's go create a tulpa. Oh, let's go create a gravicor. Woohoo! Let's have fun. Right? That's all well and good. That's what you want to do. That's all well and good. But the result is that the original teachings or concepts become a shadow or deformation of the original teachings. These profound concepts and teachings then enter into the world of consciousness and overshadow the original true teachings. So the more this happens, the more diluted the world becomes on spiritual topics. So the profaning and destroying of spiritual topics often begins when these individuals communicate with certain lower frequency dark spirits or beings when they don't have a full understanding or spiritual maturity to do so, because they haven't been through any kind of formal training. And whoever's prompting them to do these kinds of things, it's just letting go play in the backyard, have fun, kids, right? So they can open the proverbial Pandora's box and create great harm, not only to themselves, but to the world at large, because they can affect the overall consciousness when they bring something into existence that they don't know what they're doing. They practice initiations and rituals that will not really work in the evolved consciousness of today's humans. They were created for those times, in those epochs, when they were at a certain level of consciousness. Those rituals and practices worked really well until the Martians started screwing with everything, right? So the lowest of the lowest dark energy beings just can't let go. And they keep trying the same stuff over and over, civilization after civilization, and it got them nowhere. It got them trapped and imprisoned in lower dimensions and forms. They are afraid, they're desperate, they're vile and manipulative. They're trying to convince spiritual, now I'm not talking about the people that are doing the works. I'm talking about the fact that they're being influenced by these darker forces that are afraid, desperate, vile, and manipulative. They're trying to convince spiritual practitioners like you and me that they are the good guys and that they can provide everyone, including themselves, with a way to manipulate nature itself to escape out of the Earth's school. They feed off the fear of humanity, our anxieties, and our tensions. I'm almost done. Such individuals, swayed by these darker impulses, are in jeopardy of causing themselves and others great harm because they don't understand what it is they're doing, what doorways they are opening, what or who they are truly connecting with, and they are not properly trained or guided. This is the concern that many esotericists and spiritualists have today. They think the goal for every human being and of society is to have a structure of initiation where individuals can be prepared and very gradually introduced to spiritual forces and spiritual topics. Not that they shouldn't do any of these things, but they should be prepared so that, one, human and society is built up over time, not quickly overnight. Two, the condition of spirituality in the collective consciousness is not confused or destroyed with all these distortions and incomplete competing ideas on what would work and what shouldn't. And three, the chaos of what happens when individuals start to make spirituality in their own image, such as been many in cults, Branch Divinity, David Koresh, Knights Solar Templars, Heaven's Gate, and on and on. Individuals are connecting with the structure of the spiritual hierarchies and the structure of spiritual human initiation. That's why they want it to be more of a trained environment. That's why they're promoting the mystery schools, and that's why we've invited Terry here to join us this evening. So let's see how he feels community-based programs such as those offered at Camp Chesterfield. And oh, by the way, the Conscious Living Retreat in Australia with Mark Bright. That's another example. So how can they be of value to higher development and expansion of an individual's development to help us avoid the traps that are out there by this other impulse? Because after all, we all want to ascend, right?
Yes.
I'll pop that over to Lori. I'll send it back to you to get the discussion going. And thank you, everybody, for listening.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for that. So, Terry, I purchased your book on Amazon, and I found it to be a very easy read, but a lot of information. We talked about this before the show. And for me, it was a really good refresher, and I enjoyed it. But I was really curious, what got you into writing this book?
Spirit. I fought and kicked and screamed as long as I could before I wrote that book.
Didn't do you any good, did it?
I'm a Capricorn, and so my nature is to know how things work. And that's what, of course, drew me to natural law, because I wanted to find out there's more going on here. I want to know how things work. So that was my initial introduction to natural law. In terms of the book, I didn't consider myself to be an author, and I resisted for a long, long time, and until Spirit wouldn't leave me alone, quite frankly. And so
I know the feeling.
And so I thought, okay, I'm going to quit arguing here now. I'll just go ahead and do it.
Mm-hmm. Good. How long did it take you to write this?
Actually, probably 5 or 6 years. And the reason being, I have all this natural law knowledge and notes and stuff. And I was trying to compile the book. And I started out by merely listing the laws. And halfway through, I'm thinking, there's something wrong about this, just listing the laws. I'm making a dictionary here. That's not what I need to do. And I quit until Spirit finally said, take 9 of the laws that are the ones that we as humans can directly affect and control. And those are the ones where we can take charge of our lives. And so put aside the rest of the stuff you have in your notes and work on those 9 laws, because that's the way people can begin to unlock their consciousness and take charge of their lives.
So hence the medallion of Hermes on the front of your book cover, which I found to be quite fascinating. You broke that all down, what the wings meant, the key. Fascinating. Very fascinating.
Yeah.
And I chose that because you mentioned Hermes earlier, Teresa. Hermes is called the messenger of the gods. And
yes,
given what he has been attributed to have brought to us in the way of information and knowledge and wisdom, that'd be very, very appropriate. And so, being the messenger of the gods, I felt that the laws that I was going to try to explain were part of that message. And they were right out of Hermetic principles and teachings.
Yeah, I've done a video on that myself, and was fascinated by how that worked. Understanding the laws really make things a lot easier in this corporeal life, so to speak. But one of the things I was curious about is what you do at the school at Camp Chesterfield in Indiana. What is it? What are your duties? What do you do?
It's a very interesting place. It's set on 60 acres of grounds. We have an area like a green area, like the center of a small town. We have about 45 individual homes on the grounds.
Wow.
People live in, and has to be approved by the board. And so I do a number of things. I'm on the board at Camp Chesterfield. I'm on 3 or 4 committees, but I also teach in our programs, do workshops, and then of course I'm available for private consultations for people that want to get readings and those kinds of things. And so I do a lot of work with Spirit of the Natural Law.
How did you get involved with Spirit?
Oh, golly.
It's been a minute.
I think most of us can say, looking back, the things that appeared to be accidental turned out not to be accidental at all. And many, many years ago, and back in Grand Rapids, a friend said, let's go get our fortunes read. Okay. And so turned out to be a medium.
Okay.
And I was curious about that. And then I found a spiritualist church where they were doing more of that. Got more curious about that. And that was my opening and introduction to it along the way. And then I had my first spiritual experience that was truly, beyond a shadow of a doubt, real and authentic, was at a meditation retreat one time. I suddenly saw the hand of an individual with a signet ring on one finger, and I immediately knew who that was. It was a picture of somebody in spirit. I immediately knew who that was, and that was the beginning to the rest of it. It's a long story. We could take hours. I won't go.
Well, this was back, what, in the 70s?
Yes.
Yeah, so a lot of this, I mean, 60s and 70s, things were just starting to pop. People were starting to come out. Channeling wasn't big. Like, for example, Jane Roberts, where she held classes in her own living room and was able to channel the Seth material. So many, yeah.
Shirley MacLaine's book, Out on the Limb.
Yes, and I've read that too. It's a good book.
When she put that out there, they all thought she was crazy. She got up.
Yes. They chastised her. Yes, they did. Yeah.
And that was really my first awareness to a book of that type. Because she was a celebrity, it made it all more famous. But that's, back in those days, there was nothing going on.
Yeah. It wasn't till, and I was born in the early 60s, and it wasn't till about the 80s that I started to ask myself, what is life all about? What is this? I mean, why are we here? And just have these deep rooted questions about life. And, why did we have money? And why didn't we just share with each other? And, all these things kind of ran through my head. And I found a book from Louise Hayes and How to Heal Your Life. And also a few dream books. And I started getting into that. But it wasn't until 2022, when my father passed away, that I got into communicating with spirit.
Mm-hmm.
And it just seemed like I had to get all that other stuff out of the way before I got there. And it seems like that's the same type of path that you and many others have had that brings you to this point in your life.
Yes, people come into it through different gates. Sometimes it's the grief and loss.
Mm-hmm.
Where people are searching for answers, and they're not satisfied with the conventional answers to that. Sometimes it's a person's really a free spirit, and they are adventurous. They want to know more about their life, the universe, what's going on. And so people come through to spirituality and to exploring it through different gates. And we each are unique, truly. And so our path forward is uniquely our own. It can't be anybody else's. We've got to find our own way forward.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to make a comment about something Teresa said earlier. Talking about these civilizations, what we're talking about for individuals, for civilizations, for the race of mankind, is about state of consciousness. And we're always limited, have always been, and always will be, for eternity, limited by our state of consciousness. And in my opinion, when civilizations rise and fall, the fall represents the limit of the state of consciousness of that civilization at that time.
Mm-hmm.
And so our journey as spirit in a human body through all these things that Teresa was describing is this path forward toward expansion of consciousness. And so I like the way you tie that in, Teresa, to all those civilizations, because I truly believe that.
Thank you. It's been a lot to absorb and take in over the past couple months, and especially the past 3 or 4 weeks. So when Sophia said she was bringing you in to discuss natural law, I'm like, oh, what a tie-in. It's perfect. Lori and
Spirit didn't have anything to do with that.
Yeah. And Lori and I have been sort of going through a mystery school ourselves, so to speak, virtually, and plus our own experiences of downloads and communications. And so it made sense to tie that in, because it's really my gnosis that I just shared too. But I'm not alone. A lot of us have been on this journey, and we're seeing things for what we think we're seeing. It's just a recapitulation. It's another part of the cycle. And that's why I don't get upset. That's why I haven't been in a mind frame. Some people say, oh, you stick your head in a bucket. You don't want to watch the news. Like, I watch what I need to watch to have awareness about something. And I'll hear it talked about on different programs, and that's cool. I'll get what I need from it. But then I leave it alone. I walk away from it and leave it alone. I don't put my energy into talking about it constantly, because I know what it is. I see what it is. And you want to know something? They keep failing, don't they, Terry?
Yeah.
Cycle after cycle, they try all this crap and they affect us emotionally, but they never win. Because nature always wins, and we always continue our evolving as humans, and we learn what's good for us and what isn't so good for us. And we
have eternity to figure it out, don't we?
Yeah.
We do. And,
so I don't get bent out of shape when all this stuff is going on, because I'm like, okay, it's happened so many times.
This business of state of consciousness really comes down to 4 principles, basically. First of all, the divine is present in everyone and everything in the universe.
Mm-hmm.
There's no thing that does not have the divine present in it. Secondly, we are spirit with a body.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I call a vehicle of expression. It allows us to get around in this lifetime, on this planet, in this environment. Thirdly, because we are spirit with a body, we are divine and immortal. And that's a concept that lots of people have a hard time being able to embrace. But once we can embrace that concept, it frees us in many, many ways when we realize our true identity, our true nature. And then fourthly, the part that goes back to consciousness again is we were given free will but personal responsibility. And that free will and personal responsibility have been the conflict points that Teresa was referring to throughout all those epochs, and the rise of individuals that tied in with the darker energy of Mars. It's that conflict between free will and personal responsibility, learning our divine nature going forward, and how that all balances out.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah, I think the relevance here of the Atlantis story is very timely because Atlantis, for whatever reason, was a society and a culture. It was a global culture that started to evolve, and that evolution progressed at a faster and faster rate until it got to a point when they just couldn't handle it anymore. And because the original impetus for that evolution was probably not directed by a benevolent instinct or a higher vibration, that's why the culture collapsed. And we are the, you could say, reincarnation of that Atlantis. We, the global West, because we're constantly evolving and advancing, unlike other civilizations around the world, like, let's say, I don't know, the Australian Aborigines or the Amazonian natives, whose societies have remained exactly the same for the last 10,000, 20,000 years, who are not evolving. So those civilizations can never get into that conundrum that we are at right now, just as the Atlanteans were 11,000 years ago.
That's interesting, Dalibor.
Free will, personal responsibility.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
that's
and
exactly right.
It's because every society, even those primitive societies, have an elite structure. They all have elites. There will always be, an upper class. The problem is that in our case, the ruling class are pretty much after power. So that the dominant paradigm of the last 50 years has been obedience. And if you look at the holy books of the past and all these writings, whether it's Steiner or whatever, nobody ever says that obedience is a virtue.
Right. Yeah.
That's why we have to counter that, and we have to like kind of go against the grain and not succumb to like this trend of collectivism by becoming more individualistic and espousing the virtues of individualism, because as Terry said, each of us is a unique expression of the divine.
Yeah.
You're exactly right. And here we are today facing the same challenges we faced all those thousands of years back, Teresa, because as individuals, we're creating every day, but do we really realize what we're creating? Through our thoughts, we're creating. What is it we're putting out there? And we're personally responsible for that. Well, then when you take an entire country or a civilization collectively, what is it that we are creating through our thoughts every single day? And we can make choices. What kinds of choices are we making?
There you go.
Well, it also boils down to what kind of choices do we have, and just because we have technology at a higher level and we have a higher standard of living than we had 50 or 500 years ago, doesn't mean necessarily that we have more choices.
That's right. That's right. Exactly. Yes.
Sophia?
I would say, what choices do we allow? Because being in the West, the world is basically, options. We have options that most people don't have. And I would say the challenge outside of allowing things is coming from a place of love and wisdom. Because if you're stuck in a cycle of self-defeat, the natural law doesn't, in my opinion, in my experience, natural law doesn't really get traction until, like, influencing my life, my experience, until I learn to fully love myself and accept myself and
self-love is
what
huge.
I am, and why I'm down here. That was the key for me, is my dad teaching me and illustrating unconditional love, to where I don't have to allow, people's behavior, but just giving ourselves half a chance to love ourselves for who and what we are, so we have a chance to get to the next step, which is mind and will, coming from a good solid starting point, in my opinion.
The unconditional love is probably the single largest lesson that mankind has yet to learn, and we've not done very well with it over the eons. Unconditional love, or universal love, the principle in natural law says unconditional love is without exceptions of any kind or judgment. Exceptions or judgment, and that's hard for people to embrace.
Very hard. Very hard. People are very judgy. We all are. We've all experienced that. We all do that.
Oh, heck yeah.
It's just a matter of realizing it and making the changes that you need, the positive changes, not to think that way or put that out there. And that's difficult when you've had, centuries of programming.
That's right.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Well, I think a lot of people, well, it's been my experience that a lot of people think that because you're taking a stance one way or the other on something, or making a decision to go down a certain path or to not, and expressing it, that you're automatically being judgmental because you don't accept my way. And it's like, well, no, I'm not judging your free will to make the choices you have. I'm discussing openly with you as a brother or a sister because you just told me everything you believe. So now I'm telling you how I feel about something and what I'm seeing and what I'm getting. And this is the view that I'm getting. And so I'm not judging you for doing things, but I am concerned about some things, but I'm not going to judge you for it. You're free to do whatever you want. I'm free to do whatever I want. I just hope and pray that everybody makes the right choices for themselves or for whatever lessons they're here to learn. And that's the bottom line. It's why I've said it before on other shows. I used to get mad when somebody said, "Oh, Adolf Hitler has every bit of right to progress into the hierarchies, and he can, I'm like, he never found salvation from within himself. He allowed all these things to happen. Well, that was his agreement." And I used to get upset. Because I would think, Sophie, are you trying to kill bugs?
Yes, I'm getting bombed. I'm
just
sorry.
Be like Renfield and reach up and snatch one.
Bugs on my face.
Don't mess with those transmigrating souls.
Yeah,
love them where they are. They're the way they are for a very good reason over there. Sorry.
And it's all right. It was just so funny.
It's funny.
I'm like, is she tapping in again, or is she chasing that bug?
Not that stupid bug. Focus.
Sorry. Watch her tell her there was a message from the bug.
Give me time.
But no, I forget what I was. I forget where I was. But the thing is that people automatically assume that's why we have so much division in society, is because everybody has different. There's so much information out there. And there's a lot of information, and a lot of people have written a lot of books. And just because you read it in a book doesn't make it true.
That's true.
On the other hand, there's these fundamental underlying threads that have been with us since the beginning. That's our nature. That information has a lot of truth in it, and it's interwoven through everything we do. So if you stick with some of that, even though we were at a different conscious level, it was given through divine consciousness. So as long as you can hold on to it, you can stay balanced with all the other stuff you read. But without the foundation and the structure to start with, to have a foundation of basic underlying principles and understandings of how the universe actually works, then how can you make decisions about other things that you're taking in? So that's where I was anyway. I was totally confused. There was so much stuff coming in, and it was all contradictory and inverted and upside down and twisted in and out, and I just couldn't deal with it. And I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing? Replacing Christianity with everything else. I'm programming myself to be just as programmed as I was when I was in any one particular religious practice. So I think that what you're doing, so right. So go ahead, Delbert. You want to
the more dogmatically you believe in something, the more brainwashed you are. It's always, the key here is to always get like a big picture viewpoint, and what I said before about like the elites and stuff. And what to tie in what was said about love for self and universal love, I think that's very important, because we fail to realize that we are those elites. Okay, because if you look at the global picture of the globe, the average person on Earth earns less than $2 a day. Okay, we're in bad shape. So if you're earning like $60,000 a year, you're in the top 1% of the 1%. I don't care what anybody says.
Yeah.
So therefore, part of what's going on and the stuff you don't like is partially your fault. And it's not just society's fault, because they give you a limited set of choices. They make you choose, like, okay, Pepsi or Coke. Well, I choose water. Okay, because either one of those choices is bad. It's like sugar water. It's a product of corporate America, the whole bit.
Yeah,
it's to keep Teresa, you buying the products.
Yeah, Teresa, you talked about the Civil War that existed in Atlantis. One could make the case that we are still in a civil war today.
Yes.
And I'll explain what I mean, because we have one set of people that like to look at things and portray things as being separate from one another. If you're not like me and you're different from me, then we have nothing in common, and so you're separate. And yet there is no thing that is separate one thing from another. Because we're all the same source.
We're all one.
Right.
We're all divine. We're all connected, but yet we have this school of thought that we deal with. So the Civil War is still going on between those of us who talk about the unity of all things. And the knowledge of that unity as being the way for our path forward, and those who still want to make everything separate, a separateness about life, living, and individuals, and that's the big challenge.
That is a huge challenge, yes. And where would you put the group of individuals who come from a perspective that this is a prison planet? We were never supposed to be here. We were bought against our will. We're trapped and we can't get out unless we break our soul agreements.
Say that one more time. I didn't catch all that.
If I can answer that, I would say that group is anybody who's a member of any organized religion.
Okay, now hold on. Terry, just let me go back just so you know what I was saying.
Yeah.
It's a group. There's a group of people in the spiritual world, in the spiritual community at large, who believe that they were trapped by aliens or someone or something that was controlling. They were imprisoned. They were brought to the Earth School. They don't consider it a school. They consider it a prison planet. And so they're living and trapped in human soul, in these souls, in a human form. They want to get out of here. They want to break their agreements. They want to find a way to ascend. And a lot of them are turning towards transhumanism to do that, by the way, because they think the only way out of here is to put your consciousness into something else that can get you out of here. So what category? Where would you put them in the latter group that you were describing?
Yeah, I put them in the category of the unenlightened, I guess is what I would say about them.
Yeah.
Because we're all making our journey at different speeds and different times. We are not all the same age as divine and immortal spirits. Some have been through more than one rodeo.
Yeah.
Others are newer or younger spirits, and so I look at them as unenlightened yet. Their state of consciousness has been trapped by what you've described, their own personal thoughts or opinions about that, and nothing will change until they decide to change. That's one of the biggest premises of natural law. Every change in condition must be preceded by a change in thinking. And we don't successfully complete a diet until we set our mind to it. We can try 12 times. We haven't failed, but we haven't succeeded yet. We'll succeed when our state of consciousness and our willpower changes.
Right.
It's been described that in whatever we might call heaven, the various levels and stages of the realm called heaven are each made to be acclimated for people at that state of consciousness. And so for the souls you're describing, they would be at a lower level and not attractive, and basically a rocky plane of existence. And they'll stay that way until they decide they no longer wish to be there. If you follow me.
Yep.
So that group of people cannot change until one by one they decide they no longer wish to live that way. And when they make that decision, then the light will open for them, the doorway will open for change to occur and for the expansion of consciousness to go forward.
When the timing is right for them to do that.
That
Right.
sounds that sounds true, but it's I don't think it really is, because, for example, okay, how do societies evolve? How did Eastern Europe evolve out of communism? Did each one of those individual people decide that, I don't want to live like a communist. I want to have all this wealth, and I want to have a pit bull and a Ferrari and all this? No. the reason they stopped being communists is because communism itself failed. It went bankrupt because communism operates on a flawed principle of stealing from the rich. And when there was nothing more left to steal, the system had to implode. It had to collapse.
Right.
So, it's not just like because the individuals decided, we don't want to live like this anymore.
No,
Well, it's a lesson to learn.
I'm talking about a far deeper and darker level of belief than that. I certainly agree with you, but a deeper and darker level. Yes, those things occur that did not necessarily result from individuals deciding they don't want to live this anymore. Other forces and factors come into play, and this is part of the mystery of the universe. I have found that spirit can work in the most circuitous ways. We would never in the world think they could go that route to bring about something that they want to have happen.
This
They do, and they do, and they do, and they do. We go, I never would have believed that could happen, and now it did. I never thought I would see the fall of the Iron Curtain. I'm old enough to remember that, and yet it did. And so the spirit engineers that. There are still factors at the individual level in the governance of a something like Russia, USSR, communism, and the levels of Germany during World War II. There's still things within the leadership that are individualized that ultimately contribute to that domino effect where things begin to fall.
Yeah, this is true, because ultimately it's individuals that make the decision to seize control, seize power, and then direct society to conform to their will. Sure, that's logical. But what I'm getting at here is also the undeniable fact that we're repeating the same mistakes over and over again. The pendulum keeps swinging, and it always swings either to or from collectivism, and or dictatorship. I mean, Germany is repeating the same exact mistakes it made in between 1918 and 1923, and then from 1939 to 1945. Those exact same mistakes they're making right now. And
Right.
it's as if not only do those societies never learn, but it seems like the individuals in them never learn their lesson in the first place.
That's what I was saying in the beginning about that darker impulse. That other impulse never goes away because it's being controlled by something much deeper into the matter.
Yeah.
Than most. Yeah. It's so far down into the matter that it's trapped itself into its own loop.
Yeah. It's conformity.
It's got its own feedback. Yeah, and so it comes out in each society in a slightly different flavor and in a slightly different way, but it's really the same thing over and over and over.
And
Steiner calls it the eighth sphere.
He says I've heard that before. Yeah. If you were to say, like, what would be the dominant slogan of Germany, I would say it's what a lot of Germans say. They always say, "Aber das haben wir immer so gemacht." But we've always done it this way.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Spiritualists believe that every spirit has all the time in the universe to progress, to unfold. A couple of things that struck me years ago that I think is very, very true. When we talk about the divine being and everything, there are two quotes from the Conversations with God books that I have taken to heart that I believe. One is when the author is talking to God, and we know the universe is still expanding and unfolding, okay? Whatever we think of active intelligence is still an expansion. So in one place, God says, every day I'm striving to become the next best, greatest version of who I really am. The second one, which I love even more, God says, I cannot know all that I am until I become all that I can be. And through those two things, I see each individual spirit, because we're divine, we're part of active intelligence, that we actually are part of the outworkings of active intelligence coming to discover itself more fully.
Mm-hmm.
Every single individual, every single spirit, we are the outworkings through which this magnificent intelligence is coming to discover more and more about itself.
Yes,
that's like Dolores Cannon with the 3 waves of volunteers, where they come in and they assist, and each epoch comes in, does their job, does it to the best of their ability, and then they take it on back, and it just seems to repeat itself. But the thing that's interesting about Dolores Cannon is with the past life regressions and how many people choose to come back to help humanity learn and grow and become more than what they were. Kind of fascinating how that ties into the Atlantean situation there.
A lot does. It's like an eye-opener.
Yeah. In every age, there have been those we call the masters or ascended masters who take embodiment by choice. And they are our artists, our politicians, our religious leaders, Mother Teresa, people that are the way showers, even when it's controversial. I mean, Leonardo da Vinci was a way shower.
Oh, yeah.
Gandhi
did much of his life in spite of his great art, because if you look at his inventions, the things he created were well beyond the spectrum of understanding. And so he was ridiculed and persecuted for a lot part of his life. And so in every epic, there are those who, if they have to be sacrificed, so be it. Come forward to lead the way forward.
Yeah. Just like Nostradamus, he was always concerned about being killed or burned at the stake for his insights and intuition and his connection to spirit. So, those are the ones that come in that have got great strength, in my opinion, because to come back and keep doing it is
In other words,
kind of
in
mad.
other words, it's got to be a nonconformist. It's not going to be a crowd follower.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Thinking out of the box. Yeah, Teresa, go ahead.
Exactly. Yeah.
I have a question. This is going to sound a little off the wall, but it's really not. I actually had younger people ask me the question, and these were a group of teenagers. And they said, if there's no right or wrong, no good or bad, and everything's the same. See, now they're waking up and they're asking these questions, and everything's the same. Then, can you say that Adolf Hitler was every bit as much of a master to teach humanity as Jesus Christ was, or Buddha? And if that's the case, then what they were teaching is just as good for us. And I'm like, well, I can't say that DNA engineering and trying to develop the perfect human being in his image is the universal law. So I think he's on a different impulse. And that's about as far as I could get with them.
No, I think
Because I myself
it's
have
different.
always...
I think it's different. The human soul itself is incapable of evil. It's just not possible. The evil comes into the soul or through the spirit, and it gets into the spirit through the brain, and that could either be a neoplasm, such as a tumor, a foreign chemical like a drug, like alcohol, or a chemical imbalance. The evil
Or
comes
just
in through
plain
the brain.
ego.
Yeah, just plain ego.
Yeah, but in which case it's probably some sort of brain defect.
Right, Terry, what's your view on that?
We have our higher self or higher consciousness, which is the part of us that is always connected to the divine source. But we also have our lower mind or lower consciousness that is more embedded in the brain and in our human self. True spirituality comes to a point in time where we can begin to train the lower mind, the monkey mind, to be quiet and allow our higher consciousness and our higher self to bring through the teachings that will bring us the wisdom that we want. And so, however long that takes, that's however long it takes for each individual to reach that point in time. Otherwise, the monkey mind, the lower conscious mind, is the one that operates our day-to-day affairs. It's like a computer, whatever's in the database. And so things like spirit communication do not equate with the database. The lower conscious mind wants to throw that out, discard that as not being real or valid, because it doesn't fit into the limited database that it has. And so when we train people to do spirit communication, we're teaching them first to allow to learn to quiet that monkey mind so that we can reach ourselves for the vibrational essence of spirit and making that communication along the way. But it requires quieting that lower mind, that monkey mind, which has a lot of benefits besides spirit communication. Helps our daily lives as well.
The observationist mode, where you're just observing instead of taking in the egocentric thoughts. You kind of, when you remove those, and it's not easy to do, you have to really, like I always describe the ego as the barking dog in your ear, and you just gotta like shut them up and be like, no, go over there, be quiet, sit and be good. You'll get a treat, but let's just observe and see what's happening. And that's difficult. It really takes practice and dedication to think that way.
Well, it does, because thought and awareness are two different things. Thought is an active, active. Yes. Awareness is passive. When we learn to be aware, we can be aware of the neighbor mowing their lawn outside, where there are no thoughts, there are no opinions, there's no judgment, there's no nothing. We merely are aware, and there's no thought or thinking going through our consciousness at that time.
And no judgment.
Yes.
No expectation.
No expectation, nothing.
Just observing. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Wow, what a great discussion.
Yeah.
Well, guys, we're coming to the end of that hour and a half, and I'd like to ask, does anyone have any final thoughts on this? This is quite a great
Or
in-depth
question
or
for Rev Terry.
question, or anybody got any questions? I didn't see any in chat. Sophia,
would say-
any thoughts?
There's been people calling me out in chat. You're so quiet. You're so quiet.
I'm calling you out, girl.
I know, but to have this kind of information, let me back up because I did make a couple notes when we were talking about, the lower energies that can dominate, and it can be, for me, it's very distracting. To entertain those thoughts. I know they're there, but whether or not I choose to engage, and expose, my energy, my field, what am I going to allow close to me? That's where it falls into, I can only control myself.
Right.
And for a long time, controlling myself was a challenge, along with loving myself.
I feel that. I feel that too.
In our culture, at least, since, I've been around for 29 years, this,
I need a sip.
Sip. But my point is, when you're a Gen Xer and we basically raised ourselves, and we're subject and overstimulated with culture and media and music and peer pressure and you're really not giving your higher self a chance to get a word in edgewise, because the monkey mind is running rampant, tromping through the physical world. And I would say, when I learned to love myself, I chose then to control myself because I didn't like the fallout that was happening around me. And
Bingo.
I used a lot of the concepts with natural law as far as the creating force, the love, the mind, the thought, the intention. Once I realized that I had power over my life with, love, mind, thought, and intention, my scenery became more desirable. And I didn't realize that for a while that I had control over that. I thought that life was just going to run me over.
Sure.
And I was just going to hang on for dear life and hope for the best. And when natural law came forward, I was like, wait a minute, there is a playbook, that if I want, to interact in a healthier fashion on this plane and have a better human experience as a spiritual being, I might sound like I'm beating,
No, it's that shift into a higher consciousness and understanding.
And the joy.
Yes,
when
it's
you've experienced nothing but constriction and misery.
Yeah.
I mean, that's why I'm such a huge fan of natural law, because it is possible to be successful when you're dealt a short hand as a child. You don't have to stay on the road of self-destruction. There is exit sign after exit sign.
Right.
And
when you know what you don't want, you know what you do want.
And part of that,
yes.
part of that means unlearning all that cultural programming.
Yeah.
And I would say that this is where the Atlantis story is like really relevant to today's world, because the cultures go into the dustbin of history or to the curb because their culture sucked. Okay.
Yeah.
And ultimately every culture goes the way of Atlantis. So, the best, I try to not see myself as part of any culture, and to try to see myself as just a human and not as like a European or a Czechoslovakian or any of these things. Because it's ultimately the culture that instills the conformity and that creates those limitations in our mind.
A couple things I'd like to share, if I may.
Sure, go for it.
Please.
The best advice I could give to all those who are watching and listening tonight relative to natural law are these. First of all, some of the best time we can spend each day is learning to become self-aware. What is it that I'm thinking and why? And what is it that I'm feeling and why? when we can begin asking ourselves those questions and searching out the answers, we will find that there are ways for us to learn, oh, wow, here's something about myself I didn't know I need to change. So what we think and what we feel and why is important every single day. And finally, if nothing else in natural law, the one thing I would share with everyone to think about is this: thoughts are things, and energy follows thought. Thoughts are a real thing. And when we become conscious, what is it that we're thinking? That's hugely important. We're not therefore creating thoughts, a gazillion thoughts a day, and not really realizing what we're putting out there. The thoughts are a thing. Thoughts are things. Energy follows thought, which is how we change our lives.
That's right.
Well said. Well said.
Amen. Yep.
I love that.
That's terrific. Thank you so much. Because I was getting ready. I was going to that part of your book. And I was going to ask you, and you just hit it. You did it intuitively. So that's cool. That's really
wonderful.
Cool. So, Terry, I understand you're available. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Lori.
No, go ahead, Teresa. I'm sorry.
Terry, you're available for now. You're a resident of Camp Chesterfield.
Yes.
We're going to try to do something to showcase Camp Chesterfield and give people an inside look behind the veil of a mystery school. And so that's going to be a fun program. But in the meantime, you also are available there locally where you live for other public engagements and speaking engagements? Or
Sure. Yep.
How do people get a hold of you? Through your email, or they go to your website and sign up? Or?
Sure, my email is the best way. Yep.
Okay, so we didn't put the email in the YouTube description. We did put your website in there, but your website directs you through the email, right?
It does. Yes. My email is rather long. It's Terrence Patrick Ryan. Terrance Patrick Ryan at Gmail.
Okay. Right. Great. So they can send you an email if they have a question or.
Yes.
Yeah. Great.
And Sophia knows how to get a hold of me. So.
Yeah.
She's got your number. She does
indeed. Yeah.
Well, this has just been a wonderful and enlightening, and I really appreciate what you brought to the table tonight. I appreciate your time and energy and being here. Sophia, thank you for bringing Rev Terry Ryan into the Celestial Gateway so that we could share his knowledge. And you guys definitely check out his book. It's really good reading. It's easy to read, and it's succinct, and there's just a lot of good information in it. So you can find that on Amazon.
He's got some good stories in there.
I was
his own experience,
like about Fred.
I like the one about Fred.
Yeah, that was great. Yeah.
Well, thank you for inviting me this evening. I had a great time.
Oh, wonderful. We're so pleased.
Really appreciate you doing it. Thank you so much.
And a pleasure to meet you.
Do it again.
Yes. Most definitely.
Maybe if we could get someone on, and if we do that other thing about Camp Chesterfield, you could join us again if you'd like,
Yes.
More than merrier.
Wonderful.
All right.
Well, everybody, thank you all for watching. You all have a wonderful Mother's Day and enjoy yourselves. Get lots of rest. Treat mom good, because moms are the best. And we want to just thank you. We'll see you next week, and watch for the trailer for next week's show. And much love to all of you. So thank you for being here. Peace.
Bye, everyone. Have a great